My name is Garrett Sutton, and we're going to be talking about asset protection. This is what you need to know as you build your businesses, invest in real estate. As you grow your assets, you need to protect them at the same time. If you decide not to use an entity, some people think it's too expensive for whatever reason, you can start business as a sole proprietor. You're operating in your own name, and the problem with that is you are exposed for every claim. You are personally responsible for every claim. So for example, you're a plumber. You start business as a sole proprietor, you go out and do a job, and something bad happens at someone's house. They can sue you as the sole proprietor, meaning not only the plumbing business assets are exposed, the truck and the equipment, but all of your personal assets, the money in your bank account, the equity in your house, all of that is exposed to the claim from someone suing the business. So at the start, we want to set up that good entity. We mentioned single member versus multi-member LLC protection. And it's important to realize that there's a trend across the country to deny protection to the single member LLC. Let's look at why and appreciate why we want to use a state that does protect the single member. The idea behind the charging order is to protect the innocent member. So we have Joe here and Mary. And Joe gets in a car wreck, all right? It has nothing to do with the real estate that's inside this LLC, all right? On title to the real estate at the county recorder is this LLC. So it owns the real estate, but Joe gets in a car wreck. It has nothing to do with the real estate, but the car wreck victim, Mo, would love to get at Joe's property. Joe had cut rate car insurance. The claim was really high. And so Mo and his attorney want to get at what Joe has. And so the charging order is there to say that in a strong state, all Mo can get is what Joe gets, right? He has the car, he was in the car wreck. He is entitled to collect from Joe. If Joe gets money from the LLC, by the charging order, Mo steps in his shoes and gets what Joe gets, all right? If no money is distributed from the LLC, Mo is waiting. And again, attorneys don't like to be in that situation. So having an LLC and having an umbrella policy of insurance and you know, not the discount cut rate car insurance will protect you as well, because the attorneys know how to get at the insurance money. They're not as good at breaking through here, but it does happen. So the idea of the charging order, is it to protect Joe? No, it's to protect Mary, right? The charging order says we're not going to let Mo bust in here, force a sale of the LLC asset. That's not fair to Mary, all right? So the charging order is there to protect the innocent partner, which in this case is Mary. What happens if there is no Mary, right? So if there's no Mary as an owner, there's only Joe. There's no other innocent partner to protect. It's just Joe. And the courts in Florida, Kansas, across the country now are saying, look, we'll apply the charging order when there's a Mary, an innocent partner to protect, but we're not going to enforce the charging order where it's just Joe. Joe's the one that got in the car wreck. Joe should pay Mo, who's injured. We're not going to use the charging order to protect just one partner. You know, where there's no Mary, there's no reason to protect Joe. So courts are saying we're not going to protect the single member LLC. That's the rationale behind this. Now what's interesting is states like Nevada, Wyoming, Delaware said, you know what? We're still going to protect Joe, even if it's a single member. Joe is entitled to protection. And our statute in the state of Wyoming, if you go to the statute, the regulation that deals with LLC, it says the exclusive remedy, even for a single member LLC, a one owner, Joe owns 100% of this LLC, a one member LLC is still going to be protected by the charging order. Asset protection is a dynamic area of law. Things change all the time. We don't have that many cases this year, but every year or so we have new cases. The Florida case several years ago was the Olmsted case, where Florida said, we're not going to protect the single member LLC. And you can understand the rationale for it. So we have to be careful when we set up in certain states. California is the worst. California says, Mo is injured, blow through the LLC, even if there is a Mary. California doesn't care if there's a Mary to protect or not. They will allow Mo to get at Joe's assets and force a sale of the LLC interest. So we want to structure things that take advantage of the LLC and the charging order protection. So what we do is we will have, say you have a property in Oregon. We'll have an Oregon LLC, and title to the property is in the Oregon LLC, owned by a Wyoming LLC. And then you invest in a property in North Carolina. We have a North Carolina LLC owned by the same Wyoming LLC. The advantage here is in attack number 1, where a tenant is suing over the property, that's called the inside attack. They can get what's inside the Oregon LLC, right? They have a claim against the LLC itself, not Joe over here, who owns the Wyoming, which owns the Oregon and North Carolina. So attack number 1, the inside attack, they can get what's inside the Oregon LLC. Now, if you have loans against the property, they can't get the loan money, they can't get the mortgage. If you have other debt on the property, they can't get that equity. So there are strategies for equity stripping that we talk about in loopholes of real estate. You may want to do some equity stripping to take the equity out of this property. But as a general rule, when someone's suing, a tenant suing this property, sues, they can get the equity inside this property. And you may say to yourself, that's not asset protection, but importantly, they can't get the North Carolina property. They can't get into Wyoming, which owns all the other ones. So we do have asset protection here, which brings up the point, we wouldn't want to put 10 properties in this one LLC. It becomes a target-rich LLC. So one, certainly, I have clients who will only do one property per LLC. Others will do, 2 or 3. It kind of depends on how much equity you have in each property. But we don't want them to be able to get a large amount of money because the LLC holds 10 or more properties. So that's the inside attack. But the charging order comes into play in the outside attack, where Mo is trying to get at Joe, right? Mo was in the car wreck. He's trying to get at Joe. The car wreck has nothing to do with this real estate up here, all right? So with the Wyoming LLC owning Oregon and North Carolina, Mo has to go through after Joe, which Joe owns the Wyoming LLC. The Wyoming LLC says even a single member, even if Joe is 100% owner, Joe will only have to provide Mo can only get the charging order from Joe. If Wyoming makes no distributions, Mo gets nothing. If Oregon and North Carolina make no distributions to Wyoming, Mo gets nothing. So this is not a great situation for attorneys who are on a contingency fee. They get a percentage of what is collected. It's not a really good way to operate if they have to sit around, get a charging order against a Wyoming LLC, and then sit around and wait to get paid. Attorneys, again, being rational economic animals, are going to take the next case that has insurance instead of, again, waiting for Joe to pay Mo. So this is how we want to structure everything. You want to use the strategic positioning of the Wyoming LLC that will own all your other out-of-state LLCs. The inside attack, the tenant can get what's inside here. All right? The charging order does not come into play. In North Carolina, if a tenant sues, they can get what's inside this one. They can't get what is inside this one or this one. But in the car wreck example, the outside attack, Mo is going to try and get what Joe gets. In a Wyoming LLC, all Joe gets is what's distributed to him. And maybe nothing is distributed to him, leaving Mo waiting. So this is how we like to structure things, but we need to be aware that states like Oregon and North Carolina may not protect the single member LLC. So you really need this Wyoming entity here for that protection in attack number 2 where the car wreck victim wants to get up here. The Wyoming LLC creates a firewall against Mo forcing a sale of the other assets. And I know this is a little complicated. You can watch it again, but a lot of it's covered in this book, Loopholes of Real Estate. I'm often asked what resources are available to people starting a business or investing in real estate, and we offer quite a few. I would encourage you to go to the corporatedirect.com website. That's corporatedirect.com. We have a lot of articles there, a lot of resources you can access. As well, you can sign up for the newsletter, and we're keeping you informed. All of our clients are kept informed about key changes in asset protection law. So we want to make sure you're up to date on what you should be doing to protect yourself. And so go to Corporate Direct, look at the site, sign up for the newsletter, and I guarantee you'll get some great information.